The Azusa 2022 candidates forum is complete. Did we learn anything? Coming up next on Foothill Community Network. Thanks for tuning in to Foothill Community Network, your first stop for news and notes from Altadena to Glendora here in the San Gabriel Valley. I'm your host, Mark Caro. Please like, share, comment, and hit the subscribe button. So let's get started. 6 of 7 candidates participated in the Azusa Candidates Forum. Newcomer Kimberly Huff was a no-show. And the forum was broken out into 3 sessions. 2 seats were held by incumbents Mendez and Alverez, Councilman Mendez, Councilman Alverez. There was one 2-year seat that is currently held by Interim Councilman Dennis Beckwith, and one mayoral seat currently held by former Azusa City Councilman Robert Gonzales, currently Mayor Gonzales, when former Mayor Joe Rocha opted not to seek another term last election. So let's get started on the forum itself, kind of a recap. The first session, there were, like I said, 2 council seats held by incumbents. The first session was pretty non-eventful, both seemingly to be speaking for the same or to the same talking point script, touting, a $20 million reserve, expressing optimism with a keep Azusa moving forward, seemingly to be the evening go-to tagline for all of the incumbents. There was no challenger in the mix, so it was about as exciting as watching 2 baseball players taking free swings at the batting cages. We didn't really learn much that we didn't know before. You can look at their mailers and see pretty much what the candidates forum was that night. Andrew Mendez, if you look at, there's a good article in the Tribune that kind of gives a recap of it. He was speaking to the Orchard, and one of the new developments, and the Lumia, another new development, and he was talking about continuing to push forward for a smart business development philosophy. He spoke of mixing a mix of larger retailers and restaurants in addition to businesses run by local residents. So it's kind of the same thing that you've been hearing for the last 20 to 30 years from the councilmen. The smart business, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. So there was nothing really learned. Same thing with Eddie Alverez. He touted his 9 years of experience on the council, where he started, I guess there was a $32,000 surplus, and now he's touting the $20 million. That they have. He talked about balancing budgets, not cutting reserves to the community, settling contracts with the police, light and water, and other bargaining units. So all of that you can find also in the article in the San Gabriel Tribune. The third candidate for this seat didn't show up. Her name is Kimberly Huff, but if you read the article in the Tribune, she talks about her platform being big on inclusivity and diversity. So not really much to be learned about her since she didn't really show up. So with that was kind of there was not much more than that to the first session. You're not going to really learn much that you're not going to see on their mailers. I haven't seen a mailer for Eddie Alvarez. I've seen one for Andrew, and you're going to be seeing the same things. All of them are going to be saying who they're endorsed by, and be speaking to those same talking points about the $20 million reserve. They're all going to be touting from that same script. So moving on to the next session, which was a little more exciting because we did have a challenger in the mix. The incumbent, Dennis Beckwith, was appointed when Councilman Uriel Macias died in August. If you kind of look at what he's done since he's been on the seat, with all respect, it just looks like he's tied his his red wagon to the seats of the incumbents and kind of fell in line with their status quo. I haven't seen him do anything that's, different. But with all due respect, I mean, he is somebody new, so maybe he's just kind of learning the ropes and just trying to get situated with learning, the ins and outs of being a city councilman, because obviously there is a learning curve. So, I mean, let's be fair and say that, we haven't seen anything much different from him, but, maybe another 2-year term, he'll be able to kind of get more acclimated with the role and maybe be able to, bring some of his ideas to the board and run them by. And, to be fair, as Councilman Gonzales always says, one person is only 1/5 of the city council. So you can only do so much. You got to work as a team, or at least try to work with the other guys. So, let's get on to the more exciting part of the second session, which was a surprise new candidate. His name's Phillip Campa, and he was impressive. I'm telling you. I mean, he unfortunately he came in to this race as a write-in candidate. So I don't know why he opted to go. I mean, he seems very calculated, so there must be a reason behind him coming in as a write-in candidate. But anyway, he came in with some really good ideas. He's very intelligent. He spoke about keeping the council members honest. He talked about increasing population density near commercial areas with affordable mixed projects near public transportation and providing shelter for the homeless. It would have been nice, because these answers, I think they had a time limit of 2 minutes. It would have been very nice to see, or nice to have let Mr. Campa speak in more detail on his ideas. I think if I'm not mistaken, because I watched the candidates forum because I wasn't able to attend, but I watched the replay, and if I'm not mistaken, I think he's a statistician. So he's good at math, he's good at numbers, he's good at looking at big picture, and he has a mentality of being accountable to each step, and it sounded like he had a plan on how to get the plan done. And so I was very impressed with that. One of the things that I kept on hearing reoccurring throughout the forum by the challengers is they wanted to see transparency. I heard of it from both candidates, so I'm not sure if they were both talking to each other, or maybe this is a theme that's coming through the city from a organic standpoint, where maybe the people are looking for more transparency from their city council because things are getting done. And guys, everyone knows that in this day and age, as anything's possible with transparency, there's social media, there's web pages. I mean, there's a lot of ways to be transparent about what's being done and when it's being done. So I think there's some frustration there bubbling within the constituency of the city council. But anyway, he talked about he feels that things have been moving very slowly. Change has been very slow. He's been here for 20 years. And he wants to make a government that makes Azusa the focal point and model city. So he's not just talking about making Azusa a better city. He's talking about making it the crown jewel of all the San Gabriel Valley, which makes a lot of people very happy because a lot of people see the potential in Azusa. So anyway, he talked about needing incentives for businesses to remain open and reopen. He talked about tax credits, rent subsidies, marketing business incubator projects. So he came prepared. Unfortunately, again, I wish they would have given him more time to speak to his ideas. It would have been really nice to see, to hear more about in detail what he has on his mind. But that's Phillip Campa. He's a write-in candidate. Very, very impressive. So let's go on to the third session, which was actually, I think, the This was the highlight of the evening. This was incumbent Mayor Robert Gonzales. He touted his 13 years of experience, his leadership style. He talked about understanding how government process works, being a lifelong resident of the city. And in his own words, I think he said that makes him worthy of the voters' approval. Not sure what that means. But anyway, he talks about knowing their history, knowing where they have come from. He says, know where we have come from, and having the path to know where we're going have been his strongest attributes. Again, I have no idea what that means. But anyway, he talked about knocking on doors. He's never knocked on my door. Mitigating the homelessness has been a priority to the residents, he's saying. And he talked about, taking the first step in May when they took a look at a 1.9 million from the general fund to look into resourcing shelter for the unhoused. He calls himself a AAA public servant, and he's approachable and he's accountable. Okay, so most people know Robert Gonzales. You know his track record, but let's go on to the exciting part of this debate, which was Jonny Liu. Jonny Liu, this is his second run for mayor. He's got much better name recognition now. His first run he got a lot of votes. I think he got over 1,800 votes, and I think he was over 25% of the voting. Over 25% of the votes in that election. In that, I think back then he was touting robust local businesses. He wanted to reduce crime, and he was back then, just like now, he's talking about fiscal responsibility. In the Tribune article, he talks about taking leadership very seriously. He brings a lot of experience to the table. He talked about having a master's degree in leadership and development. He mentors students at APU for over 10 years, and he's an award-winning small business owner. He talked about quality of life in Azusa. In his own words, Azusa has the highest poverty rate compared to the surrounding cities, 14.3% according to the 2020 consensus. And he says, so much of our downtown business areas lie vacant, even in our newest developments, which is pretty shocking, because if you build a new development and it's sitting there vacant, there's a problem. So he talked about having a more strategic planning scaled for the community that will generate a revenue that will invest back into the struggling communities and neighborhoods. He talked about homelessness in the city. So one of the things that he talked about being inspired by a selective tiny home communities pioneered in the neighborhood of Baldwin Park. He talked about that whole model. I think he is impressed by that. I think he wants to move towards something like that. He talks about being passionate. He will be passionate, invite participation, and not deflected. In other words, I think when I read into that, I think he's saying that when somebody comes to the city council with ideas, they're not going to be hand-waved off like, please don't bother me. Let's hear your ideas. He's going to welcome ideas. Because he's looking to the people to say, hey, if you got ideas and we can use them and they'll work, by all means, let's talk. So, I mean, I really liked that about him. He came across very intelligent. He came across very passionate. He had a sense of urgency, and he was not short of solutions, which is what I was looking for. I was like, wow, he's not only has the problem, he's got the solution. It's not like, well, we'll get to it when we get to it type of candidate. Well, we'll need to look at that. No, nobody wants to hear when you're going to need to look at that anymore. People want to know what is going to be done, how, when, and have a way to measure it. That's what people are looking for. And I was really impressed by Jonny Liu. This was my first time actually seeing him live. So I was, like I said, very impressed with Jonny Liu. The common theme, like I said earlier, the common theme of the night seemed to be transparency. It was ongoing. The incumbents are clear. Are the incumbents clear about their objectives and clear about the progress for each of these objectives? And like I said earlier, in today's high-tech world, it should be easy to set metrics and be transparent of the progress meeting them. So that was one thing. I think it was clear that there was a lot of more of the same mentality in the answers of the incumbents. There was no sense of urgency. It was like, again, more of the same type of answer by each of the incumbents. We're going to get there. We're going to move Azusa forward was like a common theme. I heard that tagline more than once. And I was thinking, well, what does that mean? Move Azusa forward. Where are the metrics? Let's see how you guys are hitting them, and let's hold you accountable to hitting those metrics. And if you can't hit the metrics, tell us why. And if you can't do it, tell us how we are going to hit them. So anyway, those are the one things. So between Mayor Gonzales and Eddie Alverez, I think they have like over 22 years combined in council, years experience in council between the two of them. And outside of the tax increases imposed on Azusa residents and monies gifted from outside agencies and barring the many streams of other people's money, volunteers and donations of haircuts, backpacks and such, really, what can either incumbent point to in their long terms of service that has generated organic financial gains to the city coffer, organic increases in revenue? I mean, does it take a lot of creativity to tax the constituents out of a city's financial hardship? I mean, aren't these the questions that every city should be asking of their incumbent city councilmen and councilwomen? So, like I said, though, I was hoping to hear new ideas. I was hoping to hear a sense of urgency, a detailed road to the map for the future of the city. I didn't hear that, but I did hear that coming from Jonny Liu. I heard a little bit coming from Mr. Campa, but overall, it was a pretty good debate towards the end, and I think there was things that people came back and learned. The new challengers came in with new ideas, and so if you guys get a chance, you can view the forum. I'm going to drop the link in the description. I want to congratulate and thank all the candidates for putting themselves out there and choosing to run for a public office. It's not easy, and win or lose, the efforts are commendable. So anyway, let us know what you think in your comments below. I'll leave the link to the candidates forum in the description, and hopefully it's still active, but if not, you can probably contact the Azusa City, and they'll probably be able to drop you a new link, or maybe, I'm not sure. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys on the next episode. Take care.